everyone, today we have 21 need-to-know tips for Apex Legends Season 18 to instantly improve your skills. The majority of these are going to revolve around that brand new seasonal content, but we also have some very unique ones that I do not see a lot of people talking about. So let's get right to it. Old Apex Legends players get some serious flashbacks whenever you do mention Disruptor rounds, so them being on the Peacekeeper absolutely needs a mention, as there is a very viable play strategy that you may want to utilize. The first being a shotgun and SMG run and gun play style, but almost in the reverse of what you normally do. Typically, the Peacekeeper is meant for that swap to secondary and tap to finish someone off, but if you do open with the Peacekeeper, getting those buffed up hits against shielded enemies means you can then swap to the R99 or another SMG to quickly finish off your enemy. Beyond this though, I highly recommend the Alternator and the Peacekeeper combo, as if you can get the 2 Disruptor rounds, you are going to have a very easy time. Don't forget that the Alternator can also be treated much like an assault rifle or a mini R301 due to its no recoil, but you also get all those SMG perks. So slap a 1 to 2 times or a 2 times optic on there and let it rain. Revenant is back and better than ever. There's a few major unwritten things to know about his tactical leap. For one, the vertical you can go is awful. I do not recommend any jump that is angled more than about 30 degrees to the ground. For reference, this is kind of like Loba's tactical bracelet. Second is that the movement you do get post pounce is actually so good. If you can pre-plan your leaps by ending in certain spots that are slidable, like edges or down hills, your movement will be much greater. Finally, you can go straight into a wall jump to break people's necks and either escape with greater movement or enter fights from behind enemies. So the Nemesis is gone in the crafter for at least the first half of the season. So which is the best assault rifle or mid-range beamer if you don't want to craft? Well, surprisingly, one burst is replacing another burst, and the Hemlock is something that you will not want to sleep on. The Hemlock does a substantial amount of damage per burst and per individual bullet, even over the Nemesis, making it a little bit more forgiving if you are missing partial shots. It's going to dish out about 660 damage per level 3 mag compared to the Nemesis 544, which is about a 20% increase. Not to mention, it also will be much better on ammo consumption due to the overall slower fire rate, and the recoil buffs have made it very easy to control. If you don't want a burst gun though, I think the Spitfire is a very easy option with the buff recoil control, and the fact that it does take barrel stabilizers now. I'm expecting to see this gun everywhere in the coming weeks, so don't sleep on it. The next tip is something that has been around for a while, but if you do knock someone, say off the start of a game, we all know that Wraiths love to quit instantly upon getting knocked. Well, if you start a finisher on them to replenish your shields and they quit, you still get the finisher credit, even if you are only doing the finisher for a brief second or even less. So if you see a player being very immobile right after knocking them, and maybe it's a Wraith, just do the finisher and you might get an instant shield replenish. The massive splash pattern or pellet spread was buffed in Season 18, but is it actually better than the Peacekeeper or even overtaking a secondary SMG? Well, the massive fits a very unique role in Apex. It's meant for one type of player or someone who is trying to achieve a very solo-esque playstyle. The Mastiff is incredible at consistent damage dealing, since you do reload 1 round at a time, meaning less time between reloads, as you don't have to reload an entire mag like the Peacekeeper or the EVA 8. The Mastiff is also going to be great for those who want a very forgiving secondary experience, because if you don't know, the spread of the shot is completely horizontal, which means it's very easy to at least connect something to enemies. So what is the best secondary, a shotgun or SMG, and which SMG is now the best? Well, it really depends, but SMGs for the most part are still going to reign supreme. The time to kill is too good to ignore. The only time to really take a shotgun is if you do need to conserve ammo or if you are a very accurate shooter, and if this is the case, I probably would take a Peacekeeper for that maximum damage per shot. As for which SMG you'll want to use, it kind of depends. The R99 saw a nerf in the recoil and the mag size, which is pretty substantial if you don't have any magazine on it. If you don't have a mag, your damage to the body caps out at 204, which is actually very low. I would prioritize a car off the drop for the extra damage, as you can still get 247 damage per mag with a car, meaning red Evo shielded enemies are no problem, and a purple Evo shielded enemy, if they do get off the drop, isn't going to be a problem as well, unlike the R99 where you literally have to miss 0 bullets. And additionally, if the enemy is a Caustic, Gibraltar, or Newcastle and they have fortified, the R99 gets penalized even stronger when you don't have that magazine. However, the R99 is still going to be the fastest killer in the game, and I would run this if you are able to get a purple light mag. The Volt is also nice, and it's easy to use, much like the Alternator with Disruptor rounds. It's also pretty great, but these are going to be outclassed by the R9 or the car when it does come to raw DPS. If you get that Prowler in the care package though, you better be taking it. It's the best gun in the game. Back to Revenant, some love the new ultimate, some love the old, but regardless of how you feel about Rev, his new ult does have some very interesting combat use cases. The big thing I want to mention intention is to utilize Revenant like he is the team's tank by having Rev be the front line or the first to enter fights. Since he does soak up that extra damage, this does allow him to have the best survivability when it does come to taking damage from enemies. Not to mention, if Rev opens engagements and absorbs the initial wave of shots, he can then get a knock and instantly replenish his ultimate shield, getting an extra 10 seconds and allowing him to again continue to absorb more damage. I'm not saying that Revenant has to be played this way, as his tactical does have some very nice flanking possibilities, but this is definitely something to keep in mind if you and the squad are breaching a building together. Have Rev enter first, and the biggest disclaimer I can give is that you can't just play ignorantly. You're not invincible, so play with a little bit of intelligence. Season 18 is going to more than likely see a small uptick of Ramparts returning to the fold because the Spitfire is a little bit more meta with its buff, and the Rampage is returning to the ground. Because of this, I do have a tip to counter Ramparts and new castles who may be camping up in areas. If you are able to get close enough to these legends' amped walls or castle wall, you can simply melee these abilities twice and they are going to break. Do not waste tons of ammo trying to shoot them if you are able to get close enough, and just punch them. Are you looting and swapping items, getting frustrated that your inventory is full or just not properly managed? Well, much like you would go into an inventory to drop items that you don't want or need, you can do this directly when swapping an item. Simply hit the same button as you would to drop when you are in the swap interface. This is a small tip that's been around for a while, but I do see some players mentioning that they didn't know this was a thing. Apex Legends Ranked was a snooze fest last season, but this season it's going to be getting a little bit sweatier due to the back-end MMR changes and the overall way LP is being lost upon entering and the reduction in gains. If you are looking for the legend who I think provides the biggest buff in terms of a legend's ability to get higher placement, wins, and just have more combat effectiveness, it's going to be Catalyst. Catalyst has incredible turtling power or fortifying power to slow enemies down and keep the team alive, not to mention her obvious rotation perks from her ultimate wall. If you do want a big tip beyond this though, you can throw her tactical Q or her tactical spikes into a wall or a door, really at any angle, and it's going to drop parallel to that door to cover it. You don't need to line up perfectly perpendicular to the door. This just wastes a lot of time. One thing I did not see coming was a buff to grenades, and specifically I do want to discuss frag grenades in Apex. Although if you are unaware, frag grenades blast radius was increased and Thermite saw some visual tweaks and the horizontal spread seemingly was increased, although they're a little glitchy right now. Grenades in Apex are the most valuable tool that every player can pick up to increase the ways they approach fights. You can use them to force enemy movement, stop enemy movement, or enter an engagement with big damage. Sometimes it is going to be good to get a reminder of the basics in Apex, and if I can give you these words of wisdom, the less space there is, the more valuable the grenade becomes. This means fighting inside of buildings during the early game or all the way at the end game when the ring is small. This is a simple one, but did you know that weapons always spawn or at least prioritize the left side of loot pills? When opening a pill or racing for loot with enemies, let them open the pill and look at the left side to snag the gun if there is one. Looking to farm damage, get 4Ks, or maybe just be a menace, the Charge Rifle is still going to be Apex Legends' most formidable long-range poking weapon, at least with extreme long range. The big thing with Season 18's Charge Rifle is that it does more damage the further away an enemy is. I highly encourage everyone to practice the time and the charge up in the range in conjunction with the velocity of the projectile. If you want to play creatively though, look at comboing Revenant with the Charge Rifle, as the ability to poke and farm damage can be more easily capitalized on by pouncing those 50 meters after you do get that initial hit on an enemy. However, if you are not a fan of the charge, I think the best mid-range poking weapon, and in a more traditional sense to level your Evo shields or get high damage games, is going to be the 30-30 repeater. Heavy ammo is easy to come by, it reloads 2 rounds at a time, meaning less downtime, and the gun is very forgiving. Revenant's tactical is pretty obvious when it does come to its use cases, but it is worth mentioning the extra capabilities Revenant's passive does have. If you want to surprise your enemies even more, you can pounce or leap into a wall and then go straight into a climb with Revenant's passive climbing. However, you may want to think about things in a less linear way, as you can now easily traverse in the horizontal direction, making yourself much harder to predict when you do fight or surprise enemies. You can also almost infinitely climb in the horizontal direction as long as you're not going up, which is pretty weird to look at and pretty crazy. If you're looking for some team squad comps for you and your friends or your random players, highly recommend that you try out Revenant and Mad Maggie, as you can more or less slide along Mad Maggie's speed nodes when you do come out of Revenant's tactical leap. Also, look at Revenant and Ballistic for even more speed when in Revenant's ultimate, or even comboing in an Octane pad, as you can hit the pad and then leap away in midair, allowing for some crazy angling off of enemies. Which legends are you drawn to the most this season, and who still needs a buff? Let me know in the comments down below. Be sure to check out this video for the best legends that you can use this season, and until next time, happy gaming.